I do have experience with the steps, the way they're laid out in the big book with the help of God and a few big book step study sponsors. It really is always an honor to be asked to speak at any meeting, but especially a big book step study meeting. And then I always say like a women's big book step study meeting, but this is co-ed, it's all good. And I just heard Mark speak the other night and I'm like, God, I could totally relate. He's like, I might go all over the place and I might start here and I might start there and I might go, future, past, present, and I'm the same way. And I get really excited. I was gonna say I didn't need 20 minutes, but I get really excited once I get going, but I will stay within the time limit. If you can just, yeah, put the time up, that would be great. It's funny, when Mark asked me, I said, of course. I am in California. I have been sober. I'll be sober 24 years on September 19th of this year, which is insane. And again, I heard a lot from the share on Monday night. And, all that getting sober, doing this work has done for me is just showed me all the areas that I really need to work on, right? That it's not everybody else. And there's, other things that I have identified where I need a lot of help. But it always comes back to this power that we're going to talk about in We Agnostics. It really is. Lack of power is my dilemma, period, point blank. And how lucky are we that we actually have, a big book that shows us how to access that power. And that's, again, I'll give you a little bit of history and then, of course, how I even got introduced to Big Book Step Study. And then the doctor's opinion really tells us, right, that I mean, we have this phenomenon of craving, right? I'm admitting I'm powerless. And now this chapter is about to tell me why I need to sweep away prejudice in order to believe in a power that's going to help me restore me to sanity. Um, so anyways, like I said, I got sober when I was 24 and how funny it'll be 24 years. So you guys can do the math. I'll be 48 in July. So I got sober when I was 24 and it got really bad really quick. I did come from, there's a lot of history of alcoholism in my family, on my mom's side especially, and then mental illness on my dad's side. And I learned at a very young age to keep stuff to myself, not talk about my feelings. Um, and I didn't like the ones where I felt different, right? And that's what's so great about this work is it introduces me and helps me face all those fears that completely consumed my life. So I grew up in California. Um I'm like pausing because I'm being recorded and I'm like, how much do I want to share on record? So um so again, it got really bad from 15 to 24 when I got sober. Institutions and rehabs are a big part of my story because I couldn't stop putting something in my body to quiet my mind and my nerves. And so we actually the two first chapters are phenomenal, right? The doctor's opinion tells me my problem. As an alcoholic, my natural state is I'm restless, irritable, and discontented. And unless I have a psychic change, I will continue to live life like this. And I always think I was bubbling, right? I'm just bubbling all the time because my brain's going all the time. And what it does is it creates this sensation in my body of restless, irritable, and discontented. And when I see others taking this drink with impunity that I want to take too, even to this day, I got to tell you, thank God I have a program because, I have a 5.5-year-old now and thank God I do. But all the moms get together and want to drink and I feel like such an outcast. And it's like, okay, I talked to my sponsor. I do, so anyways, not to get too far into the future, but this works even then to remind me I just need to pursue a spiritual path. I need to pursue people, not judge my life and where I'm at and who I should be, who should I be kind of jiving with and pursuing. It's like, okay, Denise, can you please get real with your circumstances and pursue it from that perspective versus this would look good. This person would think I'm more successful, this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and judge it to what my mind tells me life needs to look like. So you can already get a glimpse. This is 24 years sober, okay? Through the work for a long time. I did step away for a little bit, and I have been back for about the last 2.5, almost 3 years now. Um, just stopped going to big book step study meetings. So, anyways, but so that was my life. Just the restless, irritable, discontented nature. I was lying to myself, like it talks about in More About Alcoholism, like Jim, I'm going to work for a concern that I once owned on a Tuesday. He's resentful as all hell, and I'm going to put some whiskey in my milk because it's probably not going to hurt me. Those are all lies. And that's what I lived my life on. So when we come, about coming to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity, um, I I always drink on a lie is really the bottom line. And so, I was in constant denial. Um, when I got sober on September 19th of 2001, I had been praying for a long time though, because again, unfortunately, my story involves a lot of, just being removed from society. And my parents would always, just visit me and give me prayers. And my mom gave me this Thomas Merton prayer once. And um, you know, it it was always just like, my honest desire in my heart is to be a better person. I just didn't know how to get there. I didn't know how to get there on my own. Um, so I I had a point to make there, and I lost it for some reason. So anyways, but I know. So I would pray all the time, and I finally started praying, like, God, do for me what I cannot do for myself. Please, God. And I would always fill in the blank, right? Like, I have to have all the answers that I'm praying to God for. And finally, I was so desperate. And there is power, a lot of power in the gift of desperation at any points in our life. So I begged God, please do for me what I cannot do for myself. And, I'd put stuff into my body, I'd drink, I'd put other stuff into my body, whatever like needed, because I would set off the phenomenon of craving. And um I would even pray then, even when I thought I was letting God down. And you can already see like the impression, right? Of God, and I'll get to we agnostics, I promise. You know, I did believe in a punishing God. And so I would almost like hide, like even when I was under the influence, but say, please do for me what I could not do for myself. Because I was so desperate. I couldn't change it. Marshaled by the will, right? We don't change it, right? I need God's help. Doesn't matter how badly I want to be a better person. There was always a disconnect between my outsides and my insides. So on September 19th, 2001, right? Talk about, so every time I wanted to take something, I'd say like, oh, I'm going to be better this time. I'm going to get a better job. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to seem confident with just a little drink, right? Or whatever it was. And it was always a lie. And on September 19th of 2001, it was so crazy. I had been asked to leave this women's recovery home that I was at here in California for breaking the rules. And really what it was fear of other people's opinions, right? So I always wanted to show off because I was like an attention junkie. So um, they asked me to leave. I get to my mom's. My stepmom picks me up, drops me off at my mom's. I can't get in the house because I don't have a key, and there's little boards on the windows because she's afraid of who I'm attracting to her home, and she's probably afraid of me. But I go inside, and I'm about to take a drink, and for the first time in my entire life, I was able to play the tape all the way through and see the truth of where my circumstances were. There was no denial in that moment, none. My brother wasn't talking to me. My boyfriend had left me. My dad was going to Al-Anon because it was so painful to see me this way, and he couldn't say no to me, and he finally started saying no to me. So all these things like just flashed before me. And, I know you guys read about the spiritual experience last week, which is a little different than the way I did it, but that's okay. I did have like a white light experience, but there was no way I was going to stay sober without having gone through the work. There was something very powerful in that moment, but I would have lived a very dry life without having gone through the work. So anyways, where's my timer? 11 minutes. Okay. So I surrendered, but because of some of my history, I moved to Boston and was introduced to this work at about 4 years of sobriety. I was actually introduced to this work probably at 2.5 years, like right when I got to Boston, but a lot of people didn't like Big Book Step Study. I went to Charlestown. It was my first Big Book Step Study meeting, and they talked about sex, and I was like, this is powerful. But I cared more about what my friends thought of me. So I didn't go till I was about 4 years sober, because I would say the third step prayer on my knees every day, practically begging him. I was so uncomfortable because I was so afraid of life, and nothing was changing. And finally, this woman, Amy, who asked me to sponsor her, I didn't have experience with the steps out of the big book. I couldn't sponsor her, and she begged me to sponsor her. She started going to the big book step study meetings, and I saw the change in her. It was evident. It was so evident. And I was attracted to what she had, and I was all in at, 4 years of sobriety. So I started going to the Miracles on Monday night. I met my sponsor, Debbie R. And she, me coming from this like little town in Gilroy with this like horrible history, I needed to find somebody that I could be extremely honest with and not feel any judgment. And the way she presented herself, she wasn't a gossip. When she went through the book, she didn't give her opinion. She was just as a matter of fact, which I'm going to get to right now, because this book is so powerful. When I first read the doctor's opinion in one of my rehabs, I saw the Roman numerals and I like fell asleep. And when somebody actually took me through it, I'm like, that is holy smokes. When somebody who has knowledge of the book takes you through the book, it is an entirely different experience. So anyways, so we agnostics, right? We need to sweep away prejudice and doubt. That's what this chapter is all about, right? And all it is, I have some really good stuff here. And of course, as we were reading it, I'm like, okay, remember to say that and remember to say that. So there's two questions at the beginning, right? So this chapter is going to allow us to, make this decision. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. So I don't have to know anything. And I don't even really have to have faith. It's just a belief. The faith comes in the repetition of seeing that the work actually works, right? Then you have faith in God in the steps. It gives me a new understanding of God, right? A few simple terms, because based on my old understanding as a child, he's punishing. If I don't go to church, if I don't go do this, and this, he's punishing God, right? But in this chapter, he's like, do you see how like the Wright brothers like believed they could fly? What about that awe? What about the starlit night? What about like the flowers, right? Look at your life. Look at page 52. You're like on the verge of divorce. You just got fired. Your kid doesn't know how to process her feelings, and you want to talk about like lunar new, like you want to talk about Trump. Okay, so stop talking about Trump. Okay, and get back to the work, because I'm telling you, I have a solution to your problem. And so that's what the book is about. It gives me a new idea of God, right? So in the first paragraph here, it says 2 questions to find out if you're alcoholic. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. So if you are, they're like, keep reading because we have a solution for you. So of course the atheist believes there's no God, and an agnostic, which we all are, even I can be, right? I keep God out of my work a lot of the times. And that's probably why I got fired 2 years ago from the best job I've ever had at Tesla. But that's okay. That's okay. We move on. And if you can't see, like, it was about the time that I came back to the work, right? Because it was so uncomfortable. Okay. So if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. And honestly, if that's how this worked, it would have been great. And, like I said, so I came into Big Book at 4 years, did the work like pretty committedly for 10 years, and then got away for, 5 probably. And then came back about 2, 3 years ago. So even during that time where I had knowledge of this work, it didn't work for me because I wasn't working it. Self-knowledge avails me nothing at all times. If I am not training for that marathon of life to be a better human being and to fit myself to be of maximum service to God and to others, I won't do it. I'll be very consuming. So our human resources is marshaled by the will were not sufficient. They failed utterly. Lack of power, that was my dilemma. And really, again, honestly, I have this, so Bill gave us the problem that he got from Silkworth. We're powerless, guys, right? And You know, Dr. Young really gave to Roland and then to Ebby that the solution is power. And we needed the program of action, which obviously Bill got from the Oxford group. So you put those three things together, right? The problem statement is I'm powerless. The solution is power. What's the program of action? And I'm a program manager, which is funny. Program of action is the Oxford group. Here's this plan that they gave us to access that power, which is pretty impressive that we have access to this. So here we are. Well, that's exactly what this book's about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. And so they lay out this design for living, really. And so much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and effect a contact with him. And all I needed to do, and when I read this chapter with my sponsor, she said, Denise, do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe? And really, she knew I was agnostic. I'm like, I do believe, Debbie, but like, you know, sometimes I think that like the way I exist is almost as defined as the color of my eyes, and I can't change it no matter what I do. And she said, that's exactly what this chapter's about, that it's not as defined as the color of your eyes, actually, and it can change if you're willing to believe differently. So I said, yeah, I'm willing to believe that I'll have a chance here. So just be suspicious, just believe, right? No need to have faith right now. No need. You can't. You don't know. You haven't had experience with the steps. Now I have experience with the steps, so I have faith, and that's what brought me back to this work. I got lazy is what really happened. So it's been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. And believing is the beginning. It all begins in the mind. And it told us in more about alcoholism, right? The crux of the problem is the thinking. And so even this begins in the mind. You know, some of the, I'll just give a couple of examples, right? Like they said about, you know, well, actually I'll say, so on page 51, it talks about all these people from, you know, ancient times, and they weren't allowed to believe differently back in the day, right? And this is what kept us from advancing. If you don't believe different, you're always going to just remain the same. And so here's Columbus, 498 years ago, he believed different and he got something different, right? He set out on sail, right? And if you believe the same, you'll remain the same. So first you have to be willing to give up your old way of thinking, pain, problems we have. Believing is just a beginning. We have to make a decision, but that is no good unless we follow it through with action, which is step 3, obviously, and then we get results. And once we get results and carry the message and help the newcomer, all that good stuff, it all kind of comes together. We cannot help an alcoholic become willing. Booze helps an alcoholic become willing, right? And so I'm just believing differently here. So then we go on to the Wright brothers, and this story I heard 1,000 times, and then when I heard it in Big Book Step Study, I'm like, oh my God, they had this childish faith that they could fly, and the best mathematical minds lie. Everyone gave up on it, believing a lie, right? And we talk about lies, and these guys had this childish faith and believed different, that they could fly, and they flew, right? And so that's what we need. And they're trying to give us this new idea of how to believe, like be open, know that things can change in our lives, because they can. And you know, that's what I've been asking God for recently, even in my current state. Because obviously some of those examples that I use are currently like happening. And I'm like, God, can you just remind me that this work really works? So I have a sponsee for the first time in like 5 years, and I'm reading 10 steps to my sponsor every week, or the 10th, 11 steps, whatever you want to call them, mini force. I don't care what you call them. I'm doing turnarounds, and I'm writing them out because the work works. I'm pursuing a faith. I'm getting down on my knees. I'm reading meditations, and I know that's like other steps, but if you continue on the work and you do the work, it actually works. So for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by rage, by obsession, by fear of other people's opinions, by wanting to like choke my husband, right? By pomp, by worship of things. I love my jewelry. I love my like expensive shoes, my Tesla, right? I like people to think I'm like doing well as we like struggle to like pay our bills, right? So So, but in some form or other, it's there. God exists in me too, right? No matter what. All that's real that I'm talking about, right? I still can be very afraid. Like, I want to appear successful, so I feel good about myself. I think that other people feeling, acknowledging me, it will create my worth, and it doesn't. So that's why I have to come back to the work over and over and over and over. We can only clear the ground a bit. Um, who are you to say there is no God? When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. So, anyways, this work is powerful. I really appreciate you guys listening to me. Mark, thank you so much for inviting me here. If you are writing, keep writing. If you're thinking about this work, talk to one of us after the meeting, please. And if you're on the other side, keep going. If you're just coming back like me, but still sober and, want to get back into the work, it's obviously worth it. So thanks.
That was awesome. Thank you.